The stellar arena of Vardos III stood at the heart of the galaxy, a shimmering coliseum forged from the bones of long-dead stars. Its walls rippled with the energy of thousands of spectators, each a unique being from a different corner of the universe. The arena's translucent dome, suspended between two massive moons, allowed the galactic expanse to serve as both backdrop and participant in the spectacle. Nebulae glowed like stained glass, casting soft, multicolor light over the competition below. Hundreds of alien species filled the stands, towering insectoids, their exoskeletons gleaming like polished chrome. Gelatinous blobs, their semi-transparent forms shifting constantly in intricate, mesmerizing patterns, and beings of pure energy, their bodies crackling with electromagnetic pulses. Every corner of the galaxy was represented, each with their own distinct beauty, form, and aura. At the center of this interstellar gathering stood the Champions Ring, an ancient battlefield where the greatest warriors from across the stars would clash. A time-honored tradition passed down for eons. The cosmic tournament would determine which civilization was truly the greatest. Only those of unmatched strength, skill, and honor were invited. The fate of planets, resources, and alliances often rested on the outcome. Today, however, the unthinkable was about to unfold. Amidst the galaxy's most formidable champions, a lone human stood among them, a species barely known outside their solar system. Their entry into the tournament a symbol of defiance and curiosity. As the horn of the arena blasted, signaling the beginning of the 100th cosmic tournament, whispers rippled through the crowd. Earth, a seemingly insignificant planet, was ready to make its mark, and no one was certain what would happen next. This opening scene sets the stage for a grand, visually stunning tournament, while introducing a highly diverse galaxy filled with fascinating alien species. The significance of the event is clear. It's a historic tournament that holds immense stakes. Yet, the presence of a lone human in this vast, formidable arena immediately raises the stakes and builds anticipation for the unexpected. Max Carson, Earth's representative in the cosmic tournament, stood in the preparation area, completely out of place, while the other competitors, massive, finely tuned warriors from across the galaxy, bent their bodies into meditation or fine-tuned their battle armor. Max was doing push-ups in a corner, his sneakers squeaking against the floor. His shirt, emblazoned with a faded Earth flag, clung loosely to his wiry frame. He had short-cropped brown hair, a few days' worth of stubble on his chin, and a look of utter disinterest in the sterile, high-tech surroundings. Instead of absorbing the teachings of ancient alien martial arts or perfecting energy manipulation techniques like the others, Max was doing what he knew best. Simple, earthbound training. "Hey, anybody know what a snack bar is?" Max asked, wiping sweat from his brow, as he stood up, looking around. A group of luffy-eyed, sleek, 7-foot-tall beings with a diamond-hard exoskeleton exchanged glances in confusion. They'd never seen such a nonchalant approach to something as serious as the tournament. They communicated in quiet, elegant clicks, and their translator units buzzed softly in response to Max's casual query. Max shrugged, his gaze wandering to a floating hologram of the championship rules, which none of the other competitors had dared to glance at yet. "Hey, if I'm going to win this thing, I might as well keep it low stress. Besides," he added with a grin, "this is probably way easier than the commute back home to Earth." Across the room, the Zarnak, a terrifying creature made entirely of liquid metal, gave a disdainful shake of its fluid body. Its massive, glowing eyes locked on Max. "You bring nothing but hubris, human," it muttered, its voice vibrating with unsettling metallic resonance. Max looked up unfazed. "Maybe," he said, "but we humans have a habit of surprising people." In this scene, Max's laid-back demeanor and complete disregard for the intense atmosphere around him starkly contrast with the serious, disciplined approaches of his competitors. His simple human quirks, like doing push-ups for a warm-up and asking about snacks, paint him as a relatable, underdog character who defies expectations with his confidence and casual attitude. His approach is unconventional, hinting at the unpredictability that will fuel his journey through the tournament. The arena was a symphony of tension. Spectators from across the galaxy had gathered for the final round of the cosmic tournament, their excitement palpable in electrified air. The ZYNK, a species known for their kinetic energy manipulation, buzzed with anticipation, their bodies crackling like static as they gathered around the betting holograms. The odds were being calculated. Max Carson, the lone human, was still considered a statistical impossibility, a mere blip in a galaxy of seasoned, indomitable warriors. Across the arena, sitting atop a black obsidian throne, was Lord Nyrak, the undefeated champion of the last 200 tournaments. A being of ancient lineage, Nyrak was an Illinoth, a species of superhuman intellect and combat mastery. His skin, a dark shade of silver, gleamed under the arena lights, and his piercing, multifaceted eyes scanned the profiles of his competitors with cold detachment. His long, spindly fingers danced across the terminal, reviewing each fighter's techniques with practiced ease. This human, Max Carson, Nyrak muttered to himself, his voice a soft, chilling echo. He will be a mere footnote in history. For centuries, Nyrak had reigned supreme, his precision, strategy, and brutal efficiency unmatched. None had come close to dethroning him. And yet, here stood a human, someone with no extraordinary powers, no tactical genius, no age-old battle techniques, thrust into the final rounds. The sophisticated cybernetic beings that usually filled the tournament ranks weren't even looking at Max. To them, the human was nothing but a foolhardy distraction, a brief anomaly that would soon be erased. Betting odds on a human are astronomical, one of the spectators murmured. There's no chance. But the whispers of disbelief only seemed to make Max more unfazed. With his feet propped up on the back of the chair in front of him, he casually opened a holographic magazine on his wrist, scrolling through it as if he had all the time in the universe. These guys need to relax, he muttered to himself, chewing on a piece of gum. On the other side of the arena, the tension was mounting. Lord Nyrak, the embodiment of tradition and precision, had seen countless warriors fall before him. His combat style was a perfect blend of predictability and brutal effectiveness, honed over thousands of years. He was a living embodiment of cosmic combat doctrine. Every move calculated, every strike designed to incapacitate. Max, on the other hand, had no such pedigree. His methods were chaotic, spontaneous, and relied heavily on improvised tactics. To the galaxy's finest, it was laughable. Max was the dark horse, the outsider, the human with a 1 in a million chance. As a hologram flickered with the final names of the last 8 challengers, one name stood in stark contrast to the others: Max Carson. In this section, we've set up Max's challenge. Not just a physical, but the cultural and strategic challenge. He's up against the galaxy's best, including Lord Nyrak, a seasoned champion who embodies the old ways of combat. The tension is palpable as the odds are stacked heavily against Max, who is viewed as an impossibility by those who have spent lifetimes perfecting their craft. This sets up the core conflict, a battle between tradition and unpredictability, between the old guard and the underdog. The other competitors were in the preparation chamber, each one lost in their own rituals. The Krezal, a race of serpentine warriors with glowing, multi-hued scales, coiled around each other in perfect synchronization, their bodies twitching in intricate patterns as they focus their energy for the final round. Nearby, a vortis, a tall, translucent creature with tentacles that seemed to stretch and retract at will, was performing an ancient breathing technique passed down for millennia. Braxians, massive, gorilla-like beings, were sharpening their claws and practicing battle grunts that rattled the walls. And then there was Max Carson. He stood in the corner of the room, wearing a simple gray t-shirt, a pair of worn-out sneakers, and basketball shorts. He wasn't meditating, focusing, or doing anything that resembled a fighter preparing for the biggest match of their life. Instead, he was standing in front of a holographic training simulator, holding a dodgeball. He casually tossed it in the air, catching it with a lazy flick of his wrist. This should work, right? He muttered to himself, then hit the start button. The simulator buzzed to life, and within seconds, a dozen blurry, holographic opponents appeared, each one moving in slow motion toward him. Instead of attacking, Max began to dodge their strikes with bizarre, unorthodox movements, a sideways cartwheel, a random backflip, and then, in the middle of an incoming punch, he ducked, only to accidentally trip over his own feet and land flat on his face. The Krezal warriors turned their heads toward the spectacle, their slit eyes narrowing in confusion. The vortis floated closer, its tentacles shaking as it witnessed a total lack of technique. Max picked himself up, grinning, and wiped the dirt from his shorts. "What? You guys don't warm up like this." Max asked, completely unfazed. A Brashian stepped forward, its massive hand slapping down on the training console to pause the simulation. It bent low, squinting at Max with its deep-set eyes. "Human, you're supposed to be preparing for battle," the Brashian growled in a deep, rumbling voice. "Why are you wasting energy on this nonsense?" Max shrugged, tossing the dodgeball into the air and catching it again. "I'm just getting loose," he said nonchalantly. "It's all about reaction time, man. Besides," he added with a grin, "I'm naturally awesome at this stuff. It's how we humans roll." The Kreezow hissed in disbelief. The Vortis quivered with what seemed like amusement, and the Brashian let out a deep, confused grunt. In this section, Max's preparation method, far from the traditional, rigorous training of the galaxy's fiercest competitors, is a quirky, spontaneous display. His improvised warm-up confuses the other species, who've trained for millennia with highly structured methods. Max's lack of focus, instead choosing something as simple as a dodgeball game, emphasizes how unpredictable and relaxed his style is. His confidence and humor in the face of their judgment creates a moment of lightheartedness amidst the tension, showing that he's not just defying the physical limits of his opponents, but their expectations as well. The first match was against a Kreezow warrior, a towering serpent-like being with gleaming, shifting scales that emitted pulses of energy with every movement. The creature was known for its speed and devastating strike precision, capable of taking down opponents with a single swipe. Max stood in the center of the arena, eyes wide, trying to gauge the creature's next move. He had done zero research on his opponent. His strategy? Keep it random. As the Kreezow darted forward with a blinding flurry of strikes, Max didn't attempt to dodge with calculated movements like most seasoned competitors. Instead, he jumped in the air and then did a mid-air pirouette, just narrowly avoiding the first swipe. The Kreezow was left standing, momentarily confused by the human's unpredictable behavior. "That wasn't part of the protocol," the Kreezow hissed, as Max landed and did a quick shimmy, like he was dancing to an unheard beat. The audience was in shock. Even the spectators from the high-tech planet stared, trying to process the absurdity of Max's tactics. But it didn't end there. Max then pulled out his smartphone, unlocked it, and started playing Doodle Jump as though this were just another Tuesday morning for him. The Kreezow, at first furious, made another lunge, but Max caught it with an exaggerated dodge, only to pull out a laser pointer and flick it across the arena floor, distracting the Kreezow mid-strike. The Kreezow's tail whizzed past Max's head, but its focus was completely lost as it started chasing the laser out across the floor. The crowd erupted into laughter and disbelief as the Kreezow tried to shake off the confusion. Max was laughing too, his relaxed demeanor so stark against the intensity of the battle. In his second match, Max faced a Zelian, a species with the ability to clone themselves and attack in multiple forms at once. The clones were not merely copies. They were physical manifestations of powerful, independent wills that could overwhelm the most seasoned of warriors. Max's approach? Act completely ridiculous. As the clone surged toward him in perfect synchronization, Max pulled out a bag of popcorn and began tossing kernels into his mouth one by one. With a completely nonchalant expression, he muttered, "This is going to be good." The Zelian clones moved as a unified force, striking from all sides, but Max was in his own world. Instead of blocking or countering, he used his dexterity to dance around the attacks. At one point, he even did a full cartwheel, narrowly dodging the clone's attack as it shot a blast of energy toward him. The Zelian's concentration began to waver. It wasn't just that Max was hard to hit. It was that Max wasn't even trying to follow the rules of combat. Max then did the unthinkable. He dropped his popcorn and made a thumbs-up gesture of the Zelian, just as one of the clones launched an energy beam straight for him. The clone's attack hit nothing but air. Max had jumped straight into the beam, but at the last possible second, he used his momentum to cartwheel backward, landing in a perfect handspring that left the clone's attack going straight into its own face. "Oops, my bad," Max called, raising his hand in mock apology. The crowd was stunned by the audacity of Max's performance, which was neither traditional nor even close to anything expected. His unconventional methods, from his distracting antics to his outlandish reflexes, were winning him match after match, but it was never through sheer strength or technique. As the Zelian clone dissipated in a flash of light, Max dusted off his hands and shot a grin to the audience. 2 for 1, huh? Not bad. In this section, we see Max's unpredictable tactics. He turns the arena into a stage for his own chaotic, humorous performance, all while still managing to outsmart and outmaneuver his opponents in the most unexpected ways. This defies traditional combat norms and builds tension, not by showing Max's strength, but by highlighting just how unsettling his unpredictability is to opponents who have spent lifetimes perfecting their craft. Max isn't just breaking the rules. He's turned the entire game into a performance of his own. Grandmaster Zixo sat in the dimly lit command chamber, surrounded by holographic projections of the tournament's most recent matches. His multidimensional eyes, each one reflecting different cosmic frequencies, flickered in patterns of agitation as he reviewed the footage. Each match was a mirror of the last, his adversary always the same, Max, the human. At first, Zixo had written him off as a mere anomaly, a fluke entrant in a tournament that, for eons, had been dominated by the most skilled combatants the galaxy had to offer. Humans, after all, were primitive, unrefined. Zixo had spent centuries honing his abilities, perfecting his tactical mastery, and respecting the traditions of combat passed down to the elders of his species. To him, combat wasn't just about victory. It was about the art, the precision, the honor. And yet, this human was different. Zixo's tail twitched as he paused the recording, zooming in on Max's latest match. A surreal moment unfolded on the screen. Max dodging an energy blast not by counteracting with his own power, but by cartwheeling, as if the very concept of combat etiquette was a joke. His concentration broke as Zixo replayed the moment, watching Max's absurd gesture, a thumbs up as the energy blast flew wide. How could anyone disrespect the sanctity of combat so blatantly? This human, he's not playing the game. Zixo's voice was low, almost a hiss, as the scales shimmered with the patterns of rising frustration. His many minds, each one a separate consciousness, began to align in growing confusion. Max's unpredictability was something Zixo had never encountered before. And with each match, it was more apparent. The human wasn't just a fighter. He was a force that disrupted the entire concept of battle. Where Zixo saw precision, Max saw opportunity for chaos. The hologram flickered as Zixo shifted his gaze to the bracket. He was next, the final confrontation. Zixo could feel the weight of history, the thousands of years a species had spent perfecting their style. But as he thought of Max, something gnawed at him. Was his style outdated? Was it too rigid? Max didn't follow the rules. He didn't even seem to care about the tournament's structure. And yet, here he was, advancing with each victory, unscathed. Zixo couldn't fathom how this human had made it this far without falling into the same traps that had taken down countless elite warriors. Was this sheer luck? Or had Max discovered something that was beyond the comprehension of the old ways? In a sudden moment of realization, Zixo's eyes narrowed. He's not breaking the rules. The words hung in the air like a challenge. He's breaking the game. Zixo stood up from his command chair, his mind racing with 1,000 conflicting thoughts. How could he possibly defeat someone who didn't even respect the foundations of combat? Max was an unpredictable variable, a force that couldn't be measured by any known metric. And yet, Zixo had to face him. The tournament was built on tradition, on legacy, on the honor of the elders and the old ways. But now, Max had turned it all into chaos, his hands clenched into fists. The final match would not just be about who was the strongest. It would be about which path would define the future, the old ways, or the chaotic, undisciplined path that Max represented. But one thing was certain. Zixo wasn't about to let a human rewrite the rules of the galaxy. Here, we dive into Zixo's growing frustration and realization that Max's methods are not just unusual. They are a complete disruption to the order he spent centuries defending. His belief in tradition starts to unravel as he faces the unsettling truth. Max doesn't play by the rules, and that makes him a far more dangerous opponent than anyone could have imagined. This sets the stage for their ultimate confrontation, where Zixo will have to reckon with a new kind of adversary, one who operates by an entirely different logic. Max stood at the edge of the arena, his eyes scanning the crowd, but his mind was 1,000 light years away. The finals were just moments away, and the air was thick with anticipation. The arena, once alive with laughter and animated conversation, had gone silent. Every spectator, every competitor, and every official had their eyes locked on Max, the human who had defied every expectation. The betting markets, once sure of the traditional favorites, now displayed an ominous message. Error does not compute. The odds have become too unpredictable, too unstable to calculate. For the first time in centuries, the bookmakers were faced with an opponent they could not understand. And that opponent was human. From the stands, the alien spectators, beings of light, energy, and unimaginable forms, watched in bewilderment. Among them, the crystalline syndicate of the Zorathians had always held the strongest backing, betting heavily on their own champions. Today, however, they muttered in confusion, unsure of how to even assess Max's next move. Some of the older, more traditional factions exchanged nervous glances, uncertain of how they'd explain this unexpected twist to their ancestors. Max's methods had been so bizarre that even the elite spectators guild had begun to question their judgment. A relentless pursuit of chaos had gotten him this far. A random dodge, a distraction with a blinding flash of light, and even the outlandish use of a rubber ball to throw off an opponent's precision-based attack had turned what was supposed to be a tournament of skill and mastery into something that resembled a bizarre carnival show. "This is madness," murmured a Cytherian dignitary beside the arena's edge, her eyes wide. Her people had built entire philosophies around precision and strategy. To them, Max was a throwback to an era of unpredictability. And yet, here he was, inching closer to finals. Even the official referees, beings of pure logic and computation, were flustered as they prepared the arena for the ultimate match. One of them turned to another, their translation protocol buzzing with frustration. "We reviewed his matches," the first referee stammered. "He's not just breaking the rules. He's rendering them meaningless." "What happens if he wins?" the other referee responded, his voice tinged with doubt. "We redefine everything." Max's entry into the finals was met with a roar from the crowd, some in awe, others in disbelief. The arena had never witnessed a champion like this. Someone who defied all forms of combat tradition. Someone who won with nothing but raw unpredictability. But the real spectacle was just about to begin. Zixo, the reigning champion, stepped onto the arena floor. His ceremonial robes fluttered with a cosmic elegance, and the ground beneath him hummed in resonance with his battle mastery. He had won every tournament for 300 years. His reputation was legendary, and today he would face the final test. This strange human who seemed immune to defeat. Max grinned and stretched, popping his neck with the ease of someone about to enjoy a day at the beach. His approach to combat was utterly alien to everyone in the galaxy, and the idea that he could stand toe-to-toe with a being like Zixo felt like an impossible joke. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. And now, the final match of the tournament. The reigning champion, Grandmaster Zixo, against the unexpected underdog, Max from Earth. The stakes had never been higher. The entire galaxy was watching. If Max won, it would shatter the very concept of combat. All the elite schools, all the thousands of years of tradition, all the carefully crafted systems of battle would be useless against chaos. And as the countdown began, Max glanced at Zixo and said with a smirk, "Let's see if your traditions can keep up with my chaos." The crowd held their breath, unsure whether they were about to witness the end of an era or the dawn of a new one. Here, we've raised the stakes by highlighting the uncertainty of the outcome, the baffling unpredictability of Max's methods, and the growing tension among the spectators and officials. With every round, the traditional rules are becoming increasingly irrelevant, and the galaxy's future in combat is hanging by a thread. Max's next move could change everything, and the question remains, will he succeed, or has his wild approach finally met its match in Zixo's tradition? The final blow landed with a quiet yet resounding thud, the echo reverberating through the arena. Max stood over Zixo, the undefeated champion, who now knelt in the dust, his ornate robes torn, his body battered but not broken. The crowd was silent at first, shocked, unsure whether they'd witness a miracle or a travesty. But then, the first cheer broke out, quickly followed by a tidal wave of applause. The arena shook with unbelievable energy, as beings of all shapes, sizes, and forms began to roar in appreciation. Max, standing tall, wiped his brow and gave a tired but triumphant smile. His eyes scanned the arena, seeing not just the spectators, but also the officials, the beings of pure logic, the battle philosophers, the ancient combat experts, all stunned by what had just occurred. He'd done it. He had won. Max's victory wasn't just the culmination of a tournament. It was the dismantling of a system. The entire galaxy had just witnessed how a human, someone with no grand techniques, no ancient battle philosophies, no high-tech training, had used sheer unpredictability and adaptability to topple an ancient tradition. Chaos had triumphed over precision, and in doing so, it had rewritten the rules of engagement. As Max walked toward the center of the arena, Zixo rose, though not with the dignity one might expect from a defeated champion. His once regal posture had become a reflective slump. His scales shifted through several hues, indicating a complex array of emotions. He approached Max slowly, his voice soft but deliberate. "I've fought for centuries," he said, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "I've trained for thousands of years to master perfection. I thought it was the only way. You have shattered that belief." Max offered a grin, his breath still heavy from the fight. "Perfection's overrated," he said simply. "It's about adapting, not winning every time. Perfection doesn't leave room for growth. Without change, there's no evolution." Zixo's reflection deepened, and for a moment, the ancient champion seemed lost in thought. His deep voice finally spoke again, but it was tinged with something new, a hint of respect, maybe even admiration. "I see now. Rules are just guidelines. You've shown us that." Max gave a small, knowing nod, taking a swig from his water bottle. "Exactly. Rules aren't limits. They're opportunities. They help you know where to start, but the end? That's all you." As Max stood there, feeling the weight of his unexpected triumph, the officials, one skeptical of his methods, approached. The Zarathian elder stepped forward first, his voice shaking as he tried to grasp the meaning of the moment. You've done the impossible," he said. "For centuries, we believed that technique, strategy, and perfection were the only paths to greatness. But you've made us reconsider everything. Humanity has just proven that chaos can bring about change." The other officials nodded, though some still looked perplexed. Max's style was, after all, unpredictable. They could hardly calculate his approach. But there was no denying that he had won. And in doing so, he had proved that sometimes breaking the rules wasn't a weakness. It was the key to redefining the game itself. As the galaxy's greatest champions returned to their corners, and the arena slowly began to empty, Max lingered. He stared up at the stars above, wondering what new paths the galaxy would take now that everything had changed. He had shattered a tradition, yes, but perhaps more importantly, he had sparked something greater, a new way of thinking. Was this the beginning of a revolution? He didn't know yet, but he did know one thing for sure. The galaxy would never be the same again. The final words echoed to the arena, delivered by the once unshakable announcer. Max, the human from Earth, has done the impossible. Will the galaxy ever look at combat the same way again? Only time will tell. And with that, the universe was left wondering, what would happen next? This resolution brings Max's victory full circle, reflecting on how his methods disrupted old traditions and sparked a philosophical shift. It also opens the door for future developments by leaving the galaxy with much to reconsider, and leaves Max contemplating what comes after such a monumental victory. Max stood on the balcony of the arena, staring out at the stars as the galaxy hummed with new possibilities. The victory was still fresh, yet already the weight of its implications began to settle in. Across the cosmos, whispers spread. Earth, once considered insignificant, had just rewritten the rule book on combat, on power, on victory itself. With a smirk, Max pulled out his communicator, typing a quick message. Mission complete. But this is just a warm-up. As the word sent out, far beyond the tournament grounds, other worlds began to stir. Combat schools across the galaxy began recalculating their strategies, Old philosophies crumbled and new ideas took root. Those who once looked down on Earth, seeing it as nothing more than a backwater planet, now wondered, what else do they have up their sleeves? The stars above, once a symbol of distant impossibility, now felt closer. And somewhere beyond the galaxies, someone was already preparing for the next round. Close. Earth had only just begun. The galaxy was on notice.